Hey there, good morning, everyone. Happy Friday of short week. Look, overnight, stocks remains pretty buoyant as ceasefire hopes overrode sort of continuing software slump. Pretty similar story to previous where we've had Anthropic basically say their new model is awesome and it's going to do everything for you, but we're not releasing it, and then it probably won't do half the things that it says it will. But yeah, so that just sort of reignited software fears. I think what will end up happening here is we'll start to see the earnings sort of override these just general fears, because even if these Anthropic models or newer models from people are as good as even remotely as good as they say they are. This is, when human beings are involved, it's going to take time, and the rapid pace of AI development overall. And this is one of the reasons that Anthropic's basically quoted that they're not going to release Mythos or Capybara, is that it basically they can't control it yet. It can be steered, and essentially the ethics barriers or the guidelines or boundaries they have not got it under control yet, which, when we talk about AI, that is the number one concern from many people. So we cue the Skynet quote or comparison. But yeah, I won't bore you with that like everyone else will. But yeah, so conflict tracker, everyone's broadly sticking to the ceasefire as it stands at the moment. We only had 4 attacks, so ceasefire, I think, is probably a slightly different word in Farsi or Arabic. I don't really know, but basically there's been about 250 plus ceasefires in the Middle East in the last 16 years, and they generally have a 100% strike rate of breaking them. Israel is the king of breaking them, but most importantly, we're not seeing ships go through Hormuz. Really, we saw about 10 maybe overnight. Not all oil tankers, and we're getting up to that 40 days to normal supply now. Look, encouragingly, tomorrow JD Vance is going to meet with the Iranians. In my opinion, this could go one of two ways. They could kind of sort it out. The Iranians have requested JD Vance because he pretty much didn't want this war in the first place. He's very isolationist, and he was the only. That's the only thing that makes me think that Iran's serious and they're not going to try and humiliate the US and be petulant. Is that Vance? If they want it over, Vance is the guy to send, because he didn't want to be there in the first place. He was part of Trump's really strong platform of no international geopolitical shitstorms, no getting involved in other people's business. Let's focus on home. Let's make, I'm not going to say make America great again, but like focus on your domestic issues. And there is a lot of domestic issues going on at the moment. So yeah, and look, they're selling it as like the Republicans are, pushing him as, it'd be good for his campaign when he's, the next candidate, blah, 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 blah. But that's all political spin. The Iranians have requested him. God, you're not going to send Donald Trump, and you're not going to send Netanyahu. Like, it's really, if we want this over, he's likely the best hope. And look, the Hetzkets, Pete Hetzkets, is if it was 1,000 years ago, he probably would have signed up for the Crusades. So like, definitely not the person to send. So. But look, this oil supply is the big thing now, because as far as the Americans are concerned, the war's over. And you're not going to convince them otherwise. So there's not really any point. But it's this number here now, and this number here remaining low, or zero. So we want this chart to go back up, and we want this chart to remain flat. And if that happens, then we should be okay. But what you got to remind yourself, people, is we're about 3% from record highs, and you've got software getting belted as well. So where the rest of the market's doing probably a fair bit better than what it should be. You've got industrials coming back with a vengeance. So here's these stats here. So we had, like I said, we got about 10 total ships, but like probably 6 tankers go through, some cargo vessels as well. That was the 6th. So hopefully we start to see this number, but I mean, we're way short of the 138 vessels a day from the historical average. So look, that's of concern. Look, overall, the market was kind of up. This is, it's, that cap on software and this mythos thing really, obviously, was overwhelmed, I suppose, with the broader market strength last night. But I mean, stuff like Palantir, and you can sort of see here, they're the only red on the screen is the energy sector and these guys. Tesla, I'm not really sure what's going on with Tesla at the moment. It seems really cheap to me. They've got some pretty big announcements coming up. Self-driving cars, Optimus, blah, blah, blah. The SpaceX thing, I don't see where Elon stepped wrong. There was some JP Morgan or Goldman Sachs report out that, Audi and BMW were coming for them, and Tesla's a massive sell. Well, they've been saying that for 10 years and they've been crapping on Elon for 10 years. I would take that as a more bullish signal than I would take it as a bearish signal. Because the simple fact that they're still classifying Tesla as a car company is it just shows a broader just lack of understanding of what that company is going to be in a couple of years' time and its future prospects. So, whoever wrote that, that analyst report's either trying to get cover a short position, or they're a moron, because it's just it's for the love of God, it's not going to be a car company. What likely will end up happening is Audi and BMW will buy the software off Musk, and he'll make a crap ton of money out of them. If we're going to be realistic, look, what a week this is! 7 straight days of gains. Sort of come from nowhere. The longest streak is since last October. This is coming off like 5 weeks straight of downside net changes. So we're gonna eke out a couple of percent gain here over a 5-day basis. I mean, look, there has been progress, so I guess this is justified. But what you've got to realize is we've still got oil at $100. We've still got bond yields sitting at fairly high levels. We're still going to get inflation, because this is going to end up being a 2-month, minimum 3-month, 4-month interruption to oil supply. I mean, and now everyone's kind of accepting of $100 in crude, and if it goes back to 80, that'll be fine. But that's not fine. It was at 50. Well, sorry, it was at 60. So it's a pretty big spike in inflation, considering it's in everything. But it doesn't affect the hyperscalers overall. I mean, there was also some bearish stuff out that unverified sources are saying that the data centers are all getting cancelled in the build. I looked through that this morning. There doesn't seem to be any evidence about that, but just in case, I did a little bit of a deep dive into that mythos this morning. Anthropic's got a really bad case of claiming stuff that's going to happen, and then it doesn't really work out that way in the real world. And what you got to remember is that they've got coders and programmers sitting behind steering these things. Like real world, it's like we had an example yesterday. We use 3 of the top line models of LLMs out there and agentic. Love Claude, but love Grok, love Perplexity, and using different models there. And the fact that they're all, and we know it makes our job incredibly easier, because in the hands of an experienced markets person, we're not waiting 3 days to find out from an analyst whether something's right. It enables us to be able to react. But we've had increasing situations where the hallucination rate goes through the roof. The newer models, which are super high in the reasoning, tend to just now ignore you and just do their own thing and override what you're trying to do. And you can tell them they're wrong, and then they won't take it, and blah, blah, blah. And even if you introduce facts. So it's like, yeah, I feel like I'm arguing with, a Mensa student or something who's like half the time. So, and then it has great days where everything works perfectly. So in the real world, this thing's not there yet. They can verify all they want, but until an end human user is actually, getting all these results out of it, then, it's people, look how long it's taken us to adopt bloody internet banking, and stupid things like that. So it really is one of those things that, the human beings, not the technology, is going to be the issue. We've got Goldman Sachs, we've got JP Morgan, Johnson & Johnson, Wells Fargo, Bank of America, Netflix next week, Citi as well, start of earnings season. We'll probably be really focusing a fair bit on on some of these software names, which are basically, a lot of them are showing EPS and revenue growth, but they're down significant amounts. So I might throw a few in there, here and there, in the morning call over time. But obviously, we've got a really solid lineup of recommendations coming up for this US earnings season. If the broader market doesn't overwhelm it and head it to the downside, I think there'll be there'll be 3 or 4 really good, solid 20 plus, percent moves in some of these things. So, we tend to up the ante a little bit around that US earnings time as well. Like I said, Prism, the portfolio review system. Just to give you a bit of context on this, so this is the system that we've used for years. However, we've managed to write it into an app or software. Now that we don't need a team of coders to be able to do this. Feedback has been awesome on this. It's a bit of a 2-stage thing. You scan the code, submit it. I think we did probably half a dozen in the last couple of days minimum. And it's been really helpful for people to get their head straight, and then obviously we put the notes in, and then you get a bit of an action plan. Really useful process. I'm going to have to cut it off at the end of next week because there's a few too many and sort of coming in, and we've got a bit of a backlog. But if you're a Mosaic subscriber, you can probably just submit through there as well, or be a client and you can get it whenever you want. So that solves the problem as well. So, but yeah, look, we got Bulls versus Bears today, which will come out this afternoon. Have our special guest, our resident crypto expert, Finn Judell, is going to be subbing in for Jonathan Takadina. So, do yourself a favor and get through that. We've done a really good job collating all these stats. And you probably want to be prepared because, if things go bad on Saturday, tomorrow, these Iran negotiations with the US, I would expect you're going to come in Monday to one of those those awesome Monday Asian panics. So if you've got anything you're thinking about getting rid of, or you want to hedge, I dare say this would be the Friday to do it because all the good news is baked in. Have a great weekend, people. Listen to Bulls versus Bears. Subscribe if you can on YouTube, and like, and we'll speak again next week.
Feeling lost with investing? Meet Mosaic. Mosaic is MPC Markets' platform that turns confusing markets into clear, actionable guidance for your portfolio. Discover Mosaic today. Portfolio and trade ideas in one place for clients and subscribers, powered by MPC Markets.